Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Top of Mind webinar. My name is Samuel Hill, I lead product marketing here at Mind. And our goal with this webinar series is to get real security leaders talking about things that are on their mind, because I just find those are the most interesting conversations to have anyways. So glad that you're here. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Let me introduce you to my co-host, Landon Brown, the field CTO here at Mind. Landon, I'm excited for today's topic. How are you, bud?
I'm doing fantastic, Sam.
Hey, it's great. We're going to be talking about AI, but I think we're going to take a slightly different spin around this mountain. And we're going to look at it from the perspective of cybersecurity tooling. It seems like everyone is throwing AI into tools nowadays, both to enable the business, but also, last I checked, cybersecurity teams still have real work to do keeping their organizations safe and operational. So let me introduce our guest before we get too much further. Today, we're joined by David Seidman. He is the head of platform security at Plaid, and he's also held security leadership roles, across the LinkedIn spectrum. You can name it there: Google,
Mhm.
Microsoft, Salesforce, and Robinhood. And David, I'm really excited for this conversation today, but welcome to the Top of Mind webinar.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, David, as we get started today, top of mind for you is this conversation about AI tooling for cybersecurity teams. There's obviously plenty of work to be done for most cybersecurity teams all day across the disciplines. Talk to me a little bit about how you're thinking about AI right now from a practitioner level.
Yeah, I think that everyone, even if you're an AI skeptic, is thinking about how AI is going to impact your business. And I think even if you're one of those people who thinks AI is just a bunch of hot air, it doesn't actually help productivity, you're still being pressured. You're being asked to defend your position. Um, and I think it's important to think about like what is here today, what is coming soon, and what's coming much farther off into the future. So that's something I spend a lot of time thinking about. And my personal observations are that there is a lot that we can do today, and there's a lot that is also coming very soon. Um, I think that the security as a human-driven field is to some extent described by the gaps between tools. Like
Mm.
humans will always be around. Human computer security will always be relevant as long as there are things that tools don't do perfectly. But I
Mm.
think that there are also a number of things that AI tools are good at today can make an immediate impact today. I think it's also important to remember that AI is not new to computer security. We were using fuzzers with genetic algorithms for template selection in Microsoft back in like 2008, I think.
Mm.
So 20 years ago, we were doing was what is AI. It's not LLMs, but it was very much machines adaptively adjusting their attack techniques. And we also had autonomous proof of concept validation. One of the problems Microsoft had was we got tons and tons of claimed exploits coming in, many of which were bogus. And some of them were intentional to waste our time. Some of them were new researchers. Some of them were researchers who just weren't very good at their jobs. And then some were very much legitimate. Um, so we've been using AI in our field for quite a long time, but obviously LLMs are game changing for the industry as a whole and for security. So what I've been my belief is that where LLMs are transformative right now is in all of these problems that are hard to compute but easy to verify. Think about it almost in terms of like a hash function. Um,
Mm.
and there are lots of things that we can do where an LLM can perform an investigation or gather a bunch of data, write up a piece of text, and it's very easy for a human to look at it and determine whether it's valid or whether the machine has made a mistake.
Mm.
Because we all know like LLMs are not perfect, they hallucinate, they go in the wrong direction sometimes, but very often it's easy to tell. Particularly if you spend like 30 seconds double checking, is this like a logical query? Does
Right.
this claimed host name actually exist? And um, and there are all sorts of tasks throughout cybersecurity that follow that model. So a
Mhm.
great example is security alert investigation, SOC AI. Um, we have tons and tons of alerts. Like every organization of any substantial size is getting on the order of dozens to hundreds or even thousands of security alerts like every day. And it's quite time consuming to investigate them. A human alert triage done quickly might take 5 minutes, done properly might take 15 up to 60 or more minutes. And you have to do that investigation even for false positive alerts. But once the investigation's done, it's really pretty easy for someone else to come along and validate that what you've done is actually correct. Did you ask the questions that should be asked? Did you run the queries that should be run? And do the results all kind of line up? So you can apply an LLM to that task, and it'll crunch through your 15 to 60 minutes of work in like 5 minutes of unattended time, 3 to 5 minutes of unattended time. And then a human analyst can open up its results and verify that it got the right answer in like 30 seconds.
Mhm.
I think the other thing that makes that type of task really amenable to AI is the error rate of humans. Humans are not very good at investigating alerts. Humans make a many percentage points
Mhm.
errors. And so your AI can make quite a few errors and still be better than people. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get bored. It's not doing the last alert of the day. It's not up at 2 a.m. when it really wants to be asleep. It'll deliver reliable, repeatable performance. And AIs also are very good at documentation. So when an AI investigates an alert, it's always going to leave impeccable notes. Like it will give you, if anything, too many notes. And one of the things we found
Mhm.
that differentiates the better alert triage projects from the worst ones is their ability to structure and present the findings in a way that's not just a wall of text, but is actually easy to follow and surfaces the most important questions. So when a human comes along and validates another human's alert triage, often the notes are really terrible and they just say like false positive.
Yeah, the bare
Mhm.
minimum
This
at
seems
best. Yeah.
legitimate.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? I can't even double check this. The machine's notes, you can double check it, and it will always run a more thorough investigation than almost any human, particularly a human who's pressed for time. You know, you look at a typical alert investigated by a human in a SOC, very often they've run like 2 or 3 queries. They've run some very
Mhm.
standard checks, pulled in some metadata. Sometimes they'll copy paste some data out of a tool they have access to that makes it look like they've done some work, but it's not actually useful work. It doesn't shed any light on what is an actual attack or not, and then they'll click the false positive button. And they're so trained to click that false positive button. And that's just like the psychology of humans. Like we can't help it. If you see 99% false positive alerts, you're going to reach for the false positive button from the moment that you open that alert. You're not
Mhm.
trying to find out what happened. You're trying to figure out why this one is false
Mhm.
positive and what
Yeah.
notes I can put that won't get me yelled at by my boss later. The machines are
Yeah.
approaching it from a totally different perspective. They are actually running a real investigation every single time. They're not bored. This is, as far as it knows, this is the first alert it's looked at for the day.
Mhm.
And so even though they will make mistakes, they will make those mistakes in a way that is better than humans and more discoverable, better documented. The risk is that we start to assume that they won't make any mistakes at all. You know, I
Mhm.
was telling one of my coworkers this just a moment ago, actually, that if you have if the AI is 95% correct, it means that you have to look at 20 cases on average to find one mistake. And that's a lot of effort to put into to validating. And you know, that's the average. Sometimes you'll look at 50 cases and it won't have made a single mistake. But the mistake is still there
Mhm.
to be found if it has a 99% or 99.9% error
Mhm.
rate.
Mhm.
There are still mistakes being made. So this is a question for us as security leaders. How do you establish trust? You know, I can personally say, I just believe that this is effective enough. I've looked at 50 cases and I found 2 errors, and that's better than what I find with my humans. And so I'm just going to trust it. That's fine for the very short term, but it's really hard for us to develop that trust in the long term that we're going to put our entire business, like we're going to take the human out of the loop. We're going to run this thing fully autonomously. My boss is gonna, if I told my boss that right now, I think he would, like, yeah, that's not acceptable.
Not a
You're
great
gonna
Yeah.
conversation.
When
Yeah.
David, when you think about the different tiers of the SOC, you have tier one, tier two, tier three, I would say is like the most common construct of the SOC and kind of how people lay out SOC responsibility. I think there's been a lot of debate on like where AI is the best. And I think it has application in each tier, but what tiers do you see having like an immediate impact where we can repurpose analysts to do something that is addressing a gap where AI can't play?
Um, I actually think that the entire SAW concept, all 3 tiers, is basically gonna go away. I think that we'll
Mhm.
have a handful of people who babysit the AI, they do spot checks, they address the handful of edge cases that the AI rejects, but I think that that role is not long for the world. Now, I should say, I am talking here about the leading edge of the market. There are going to be organizations that are 5 to 10 years behind what is technologically possible. They're gonna suffer a lot for it, but, deployment curves are slow for legacy companies in particular.
Mhm.
We're a technology company, we're a small technology company, we're embracing AI very aggressively, and so we're gonna be out at the leading edge, but there are gonna be companies that are much slower. But right now, already today, you can buy really, really great AI SOC technology. We're deploying it now. Um,
Mm.
and like as of right now, you can replace your SOC with an AI, and it's probably a good decision. You have to be careful because there are tons and tons of companies in this space, and some of them are
Sure.
not as good as others. But this technology is ready today. So
Mm. Mhm.
tiered 1 through 3, you probably need some humans to babysit it. Like I said, the biggest weakness I've seen is the AI fails to take a stand. It knows what the answer is, but it doesn't have the confidence to auto close an alert. That's when we see it escalating to humans. That's what we see. We don't see truly, I don't know. We don't see
Mhm.
full on errors. What we see is lack of confidence. So you still need somebody to go in and pat it on the shoulder and say, yes, you did get it right. Uh, and click the close button on those alerts. And then you need someone on in the incident response function to handle the human side of things. So this is a place
Mm.
AI isn't there yet. Um, AI is not yet capable of identifying all relevant stakeholders,
Mhm.
mobilizing them, communicating to different audiences interactively. It's pretty close. Like if you found yourself without an incident response team and you really needed one, you could probably press an AI into it, but it's going to make some critical errors. It's not going to be sufficiently reassuring to stakeholders. The fact that it's an AI is not going to be reassuring to some stakeholders. Like
Mm.
people in general do not trust AI yet because AI makes too many mistakes and because it's not human. Some people just intrinsically distrust it because it's not human. And like no matter even if it's better than a human on paper, they still won't trust it. And in an incident response, you just can't have that. You need the trust. And when an incident happens, you're talking like millions to billions of dollars. You can afford to pay a human for those circumstances.
Right.
Like
Right.
this is not a time to optimize on cost.
Yeah.
So uh, human incident responders have a long future ahead of them, and it's going to be very focused on the human aspect, the communication
Mm.
aspect. Now, and that's not to say that AI won't help their job a lot. We're already using incident AI for both security and non-security incidents. It's tremendously helpful for taking notes, tracking action items, tracking attendees, establishing a cadence, nicely formatting all of your collateral, spinning up Slack channels and communication channels, writing specific communication pieces. It's really useful for all of those things, but it's not quite
Mhm.
of being autonomous. You're not going to just like let it run your incident for you yet. And that's probably going to be a ways off. Now, I do think that
Yeah.
those functions are going to improve over the next like 1 to 2 years. It's not going to be long before a human is reduced to basically being the communicator and babysitter of the AI. Um,
Mhm.
but I do think we're going to keep a human in the incident response a part of the process for the long run. I think the other thing there is when you think about digital forensics, you want somebody who's going to be able to testify in court, and AIs cannot do that.
I mean, I can see a day where we have an AI testify in court, David. I don't think that would be too hard to imagine. But Lane, what do
Well,
you
what's
think
gonna
about all that? I mean, error rates in the SOC, error rates in humans versus AI. How do you
Yeah.
process all of that?
Yeah, I think it's very terrifying for the security analysts that have put their feet up on the desks and relied on their career to have tools tell them how to run their job, right? I think we're getting into this world where who was that? I think it was the founder of OpenClaw said that he doesn't use the term engineering anymore or like kind of like agentic AI. He says, hey, like security analysts and other analysts and just engineers in general need to get in the mode of agentic engineering, right? And so he kind of brought up this kind of future of bespoke agentic engineering. And it makes me wonder, David, is there a future where we almost have like this agentic engineering on demand approach in security where you look at like SCCM today, Tanium today, Ninja One today, where like I have like a software library of things I can choose from. Is there a future with like Forge AI and kind of like the new creation framework that are coming out for me to be able to say, hey, I'm a security professional. I'm going to drag and drop and create this agent that I need on demand to go and do a task for me. And then that's like an ephemeral agent, right? And like, is there a world where like the future of some portions, maybe nested functions in security, are more like ephemeral agentic engineering to some extent?
Yeah, I think that that is going to be the world we inhabit approximately from now through the next maybe 2 to 3 years. I think once we start to look at about 2 to 3 years plus from now, that will be done. That all of those
Mm,
functions will be either pre-created mostly by AIs or created on the fly by other AI agents. Like
hmm
AIs are very good at coding. They're very good at creating other agents and other AI functionality. Uh,
hmm
and what they tend to lack is the direction. Um, they are not intrinsically goal setting much of the time. I think by the time we get to 2 to 3 years from now, they'll have that down quite a bit better. And already today, we see AIs that are pretty good at it, but they miss often enough that you wouldn't want to trust your whole security response process to it. So you need a person. But I do think that folks who are in the SOC now need to think very, very hard about becoming builders. Like, I do not think that the analyst role will continue to exist in meaningful quantities. And
Hmm.
even I see two paths. One is they're fundamentally becoming AI engineers who are developing the AI systems at very large scale, very high level. Figuring out what agents do you need, what roles should they be playing, what kinds of investigations and questions should they be undertaking. And I see
hmm
advanced analyst path where you're doing the really weird, hard things that are edge cases that AIs can't handle for one reason or another, or where you specifically need a human, like for legal reasons. But honestly, if I were an AI analyst, I would be panicking right now and working very hard at finding some other career.
Well, I
I,
think that's an interesting take there, David, about like the edge cases, because that's what I think of when obviously there's a lot of like the real grunt work that comes with just daily investigative work or ticket work or any of that stuff that's just the grist of the mill in cybersecurity. But with AI also helping the bad guys to do things faster and at scale and new novel attacks and TTPs, hitting the market every single day. How I think the novelty is kind of where I kind of look at that and say, how do we approach AIs? And yes, they're non-deterministic. Yes, they're autonomous, and I'm understanding all that, but they're trained on, they can do those things because they've been trained on a corpus of data and historical perspectives and those things. So help me understand like that novelty sense where if all of a sudden an organization's got this really weird new TTP that was maybe custom built by an AI for your specific org, walk me through what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think that that is a place where we're going to see very big changes in the next couple of years. So today, that is fundamentally a human reaction. If we see a
Sure.
TTP that is significantly different from things we've seen before, like a human is sitting down with some AI tooling and building detection rules and prevention policies, and the AI may help them translate their ideas into technical implementation, but the
hmm
AI is not going to take this brand new TTP and develop rules from scratch for it. That
Sure.
will work for TTPs that are variants of known things,
Yeah, certainly.
a new file name or a new way of encoding something. And AI can absolutely do that today. In fact, we're actually working on that a pipeline to go directly from a blog post to a control. If you think about it, like summarizing a blog post to extract TTPs, very much an LLM core competency, and
Certainly.
then systems like
hmm
Wiz already have AI that you give a plain text description of a TTP and it attempts to make a control for you, and they're really pretty good.
mm
So making that automated might just be plumbing. So we're actually
Okay.
working on that, and stay tuned. Um,
Yeah. No, it makes
the
a lot of sense, right? Because obviously, like, but there's also that place where sometimes, like, as a responder, you're like, you have a gut feeling about something. Maybe you're right more often than you're wrong, but like, that's just an experience of having seen literally thousands of things hitting your system repetitively. Yeah, so could a lot of that be automated with an AI system? Certainly. But at the end of it too, like I guess I'm just kind of wanting to find that line where absolutely will they be able to get to that root cause faster, or get to a specific preventative control faster, or a mask, or whatever they're going to do to mitigate the thing with an AI tool, with an investigative help. I'm with you 100% on that. I guess where's that line of the cost benefit analysis of AI is doing everything to respond to the AI attacks that are being driven by AI? What hope do we have as humans?
Well, actually, I think that there's sorry, I thought you were going to ask a different question. What hope do we
Okay.
have as defenders? There's
Oh,
very different answers to this. As defenders,
yeah.
I actually think that we may be uh, there's one factor I think works really against us that's really dumb, and one thing that works for us that is really cool. So
Okay.
the dumb factor is deployment cycles. Like the
Okay.
attackers don't have to wait for legal to review the contract, finance to approve the money, to do the POC of the 5 different vendors and establish a success.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like by the time you're done, it's 6 months from where you started. And the
Yeah.
attackers don't have to do that. They just run the tool and it either works or it doesn't.
Right.
I guess the government contractor attackers probably do have to do some of the same things. They're uh, that's a separate thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but um, but the flip side of that is it's always been historically impossible to have anything like full detection coverage. There are way, way, way more TTPs than you could
Yeah.
possibly write detection rules for and tune them and apply, to vary them for your specific environment. But with AI, we may be able to solve that problem. Like AI may be able to crank out 10,000 detection rules customized for the specific systems that you use. Take some TTP that was used against SQL Server and make it work for MySQL, which your organization is using, or Postgres or whatever.
Sure.
And so that is a tremendous new capability that we may get. We may finally be able to have actual true 100% detection coverage and verified detection coverage, because they can also make test cases for all of those things. And who cares if it's not perfect? You might have 10,000 detection rules and 10% of them are garbage and will never find anything. You still have 9,000 detection rules, which you didn't have. And you
Hmm.
care if they have a really bad false positive rate because your AI SOC is taking care of that. And so the actual problem for humans is very few false positives. So you suddenly have like massive detection coverage that you could never possibly have had before. Now, some people I'm sure are seeing dollar signs in the back of their heads because that all is going to be really expensive, like really, really expensive. But that's great. We can
Hmm.
customize. Like we can decide maybe we'll only have 5,000 detection rules because the last 5,000
Hmm.
worth the money. Maybe we'll spend some money on AI detection tuning so that the false positive rate is 1% instead of 5%. But we're doing that because it saves money, not because it's a capability we literally don't have. Today, this is a capability we literally don't have. There is no possible way to get 100% detection coverage or anything close to it. So I
Interesting.
actually think that as defenders, there's tremendous potential for this to be a positive for us once we get through that deployment cycle.
Yeah. David, it reminds me of kind of a situation that I was in. I was at the agency, and I'll leave the exact agency unnamed. Working with them, they basically got us all into a room, the headquarters of the agency, said, "Hey, we don't have a smoking gun, but we have the smell of smoke, right? Something's here, something's present." And we kind of all agreed that, hey, this is like a level 8 out of 10, level 8 advanced like APT that we're dealing with here. We have no idea really where to start. And we had this solution that was homebrewed, that was basically taking PCAP data and had some dedicated machine learning models, and it was evaluating like, hey, is this normal behavior or not? And just really trying to start at a basic level, normal, not normal, based on what we know. And one of the things that we found at like 2 a.m. in the morning, tired, exhausted, on energy drinks, was if we played the PCAP at 10 times speed at the same model, the model found behavior that it didn't find at normal speed. Right. And it gave us this advantage immediately that we could see the slow drip, and we found the smoking gun at this point. Right. We were able to see the slow drip of an attacker's behavior over the course of months by playing those PCAPs and all of that historical data at 10 times speed. And it gave us this feeling that, hey, like, AI and machine learning can give us as defenders this defensibility, right? This ability to defend, I would say. And so, like, I think the question I have, and I'd like your thoughts, David, if you had to make a claim, are we entering the most defensible area our defensible era of cybersecurity, or are we entering the most vulnerable era? Because the attackers still have that capability as well.
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think it's going to get very bad and then it's going to get very good. This is my prediction.
Hmm.
So I think what's
Hmm.
going to happen is that very soon, like this might be a little bold, but like next few months, we're going to see a significant uptick in vulnerability discovery, weaponization in 0 days. Gadi Evron and others, Heather Adkins, who was my former manager at Google, um, have been predicting this vulnerability cataclysm. And I think the
Hmm.
signs continuing to point in that direction, that AIs are getting better and better at finding vulnerabilities and at weaponizing them. And it doesn't take that much more progress from where we are today before 0-day exploitation is point and click. That is really scary. And
Hmm.
because of the fact that attackers don't need to wait for deployment cycles, as soon as that technology is ready in the lab, it's going to start hitting companies and organizations for real. Like the cutting edge is relevant to defenders. And it's really hard for us to deploy cutting edge defensive technologies in response to that. So I think like sometime in the next few months to year or so, we're going to have a really bad period where exploitation is going to go through the roof. And it's going to be like the 90s again, where anybody who cares can just pop any machine they want and sitting ducks. Only instead of in the 90s, it was a handful of kids in their proverbial basements. Now it's a professional industry with a bunch of employees and government employees doing this for political purposes, as well as
Hmm.
kids in their basements doing it for money and for street cred. Um, so that is terrifying to me. And we don't have great options because the AI defensive solutions are more like a juggernaut. They're slow moving. They're going to arrive someday, but they're not here yet. And it's going to take a long period of development, iteration, and deployment before we can get these things rolled out. I mean, how many businesses are not using hardware bound 2FA today? Like, this has been a known practice, a known best practice for years and years. How many are not using any 2FA at all? Like,
Right.
these are things that we've had this solution for like decades and
Hmm.
still aren't using them. Actually, I happen to have here on my desk an E-Trade 2FA token from early 2000s.
Nice.
And it actually still works, believe it or not. It's like almost
That's
No,
20
that's
great.
awesome.
maybe it's more than no, it's more than 20. I think I was in college when I got that. Um, and so we've had these solutions for a long time, but businesses and consumers still have not adopted them. So that's what's weak. Now, what's strong for defenders in the longer term, and by longer term, this might only be like 3 years, is you take things like Claude Code, the same kind of vulnerability discovery tools, like the attackers can run them, but so can we. So we can find those vulnerabilities, and then we can use Claude Code and other coding tools to fix them. And
Right.
potentially another truism of security has been you can't find and fix all the vulnerabilities. All products will have vulnerabilities. That may become untrue. We may be able to find and fix essentially all of the vulnerabilities. There will always still be theoretically vulnerabilities out there, but we may get to a point where we're discovering them like a new vulnerability every few years instead of every day.
Mm.
Get tools that can find vulnerabilities point and click, and then like all of us doing defense will run them. We'll find thousands of vulnerabilities. Our developers will hate us, but they'll also appreciate that like these are real problems. The
Hmm.
AIs, they're already good at finding vulnerabilities. They're also good at finding fake vulnerabilities, and that's
Yeah.
a problem. But they're going to fix that. That's definitely
Yeah.
there already. So I think that we have the potential where we can have products that are nearly free of vulnerabilities, defense that can actually detect just about everything, detection and prevention systems that autonomously react in real time to new threats as they're discovered. Like, these are all things that the technology is either here today or is very, very close. Like, we do not need
Hmm.
technological breakthroughs. On
Yeah.
the other hand, are they actually going to get deployed and on what time frame? That's
Yeah.
the problem.
You know, It's interesting. I think about so obviously, David, as you know, building an endpoint agent to do DLP is really hard, right? You're familiar with kind of our process behind
Mhm.
this and the historical market process behind this. And we've learned a lot going through this process. But one of the things that highlighted on the development side is when you're doing low level programming, you need to have experience with what that feels like. You can't like there are areas where even today, like OpenCloud couldn't diagnose why we were having bugs building this endpoint agent, and we needed to have somebody that from IDF 200 or 8200 that like had this experience in low level vulnerability research. And I think back to like when I went through college, my father, the software developer, he went through college, and a lot of the things he did was assembly code, low level code, and then by the time I started college, it was all high level code, Python, JavaScript, right? And it seems to be this gap where there's a foundation of just how electronics work. Right. And as the new generation and every generation follows, it seems like we get further and further away from that. Is there a point where there's an equal cataclysm of intelligence where we don't know how to fix the things that we've created at some point, or we don't know how to diagnose the things that we want to fix, if that makes sense? And how does that apply to security, do you think?
Oh, I mean, we're already there. Like as you just explained very well. Like very few developers can look at machine code and have any idea what's going on. Like you can,
Mhm.
I have known people, and I've very briefly been one who could look at hex and tell you what it did. But there
Right.
were like, not that many of those people.
Right.
And, step up to assembly, you get a few more, step up to like low level C code, you get a few more, but we're already extremely abstracted from what's going on at the machine layer. And even assembly, like, with speculative execution and pipelining, like it's doing a bunch of stuff that it doesn't actually say there in the assembly code down at the
Hmm.
process. So, um, we're already extremely abstracted from those layers. And that I think that's okay as long as the abstraction works. So as we move up another level and we're vibe coding, the reason why vibe coding is problematic is because the abstraction doesn't work very well. Like
Hmm.
it generates code and then the code itself doesn't work. And the person who doesn't understand what that code is doing is lost. It would be like if your C++ compiler routinely produced buggy assembly code. Uh,
Hmm.
but what we got to, and like that was the case early on. Well, what they actually did was strip all the features out of the language, so you couldn't code very much. So, but same idea. Like um, as time went on, they improved that so that the code that came out was more and more consistently correct until today. Compiler bugs are exceptionally rare, and at some point in the future, AI coding bugs will be exceptionally rare. I think that will probably be quite a ways in the future. I
Hmm.
think the other problem is that often AI coding bugs are design flaws. They're at times where the machine made one of several reasonable choices, but it wasn't the one that you wanted. Um,
Hmm.
Not much to be done about that. Um,
Hmm.
Human programmers have that problem too.
Yeah.
Uh,
What are
so
those foundations in the security team? When you think about this problem, you think about like, hey, well, someone that can survive right now and probably into the future is still someone that understands the foundation of how things work a little bit,
Mhm.
has somewhat familiarity with that low level approach. Like, what are those things that you think we should preserve as a security function? Like, what are the things that are going to stay foundations forever, regardless of how much autonomy and AI we ingest into that process?
I think the fundamental thing that makes security a cool field and that will last for as long as humans have jobs in this field is the creativity. I think when coming up with the nth variation of a pre-existing vulnerability, that's going away. Coming up with an
Mm,
entire new vulnerability class, an entirely new
mm,
exploitation class, that's the new thing. Like, this might be kind of an esoteric example, but return-oriented programming. Do you all know what
mm,
that is? Maybe
mhm,
that's worth an explanation for the listeners.
Yeah.
So, um, it used to be that you could put code anywhere in the machine memory, and if you could get the machine to jump to that code, it would execute it as a program. Um, and that's obviously a security problem. That's how most exploits worked. So then various protection technologies came along, data execution prevention on Windows, where uh, memory was marked as either executable or data and not both at the
Mm.
same time. And so you could get your malicious program into memory and jump to it and it would crash because it was not executable. And so this like fundamentally broke the exploitation paradigm of the time.
mm,
But then somebody got very creative and they said, hey, what if we string together existing code in a way that causes it to do what we want. And so what they would do is find an instruction that they wanted to run, followed by a return statement, and
Mm,
another instruction they wanted to run that was followed by a return statement in existing code. And then they would
mm,
load up the stack with return addresses so that when the first return, they'd run their one instruction, and then it would return, and it would return to the second instruction they wanted to run, and then it would return to the third instruction, and so on until they had run the malicious program that they had intended to run.
mm.
That was a
Interesting.
totally new paradigm. Return-oriented programming, or ROP is the name of that.
Hmm,
A totally new paradigm. It will be a very, very long time before AI can come up with things like that on its own. So
mhm,
that kind of lateral, novel thinking is going to be a human preserve for basically as long as humans have jobs anywhere.
mm.
Maybe plumbers will have jobs even beyond that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I love
data
it.
centers still need cooling, right? Like, they're going to still need electricity. They're going to still need, the basics of
Oh,
the
I
trades, like,
think
and
data
maybe
centers are. I mean, data centers are already extremely roboticized. I think
yeah,
that one will fall to the robots sooner. But
certainly.
the physical robotics is a materials engineering challenge and a build out challenge that will last beyond. That could be done digitally and centrally.
So okay, so let's summarize here a little bit, and kind of I want to hear a little bit more about kind of what the future looks like in David Seidman's vision of it. I think that's fascinating. So it sounds like obviously you're very bullish on the AI work currently happening around detection engineering, alerting, SOC functions, maybe even a little bit into the triaging and investigation world, and at all levels of the SOC. You're very bullish on that. I think that's pretty positive right now, simply just because the error rate is going to be better than a human analyst at similar volumes, I would imagine. So maybe help me out here a little bit. Coming soon to a security team near you, stuff that you're like, you know what, I think this will be great, but maybe it just needs a little bit more dev cycles and in a couple of years of work there. What are some of those things you think of?
Yeah, pen test red team. That's coming soon. We've looked at a
Okay.
lot of tools. They're pretty immature. You can see how someday they'll get there, but right now they're kind of either just a wrapper around Metasploit, or they're just firing tests very randomly without much success. But
Mm,
you can
Just shooting
they're
blanks into the
slowly
dark. Yeah,
starting
it's
to
your
get
network.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's coming. SAST, I think, is industry-wide. The stock market thinks it's here and is punishing
Yeah.
totally unrelated companies as a result. Um, why does CrowdStrike stock go down when a new SaaS tool comes out? These are one of these things is not like the other. Um, so, but that is coming. That and fixing too. Vulnerability management as a class potentially being revolutionized
Mhm.
in the near term. Um, we're seeing tools now that can look at a patch and tell you down to the line of code that changed how this will impact your code. You use this function that calls this function that calls this function that eventually winds up here. Here's how that will look.
mhm,
Um, Testing is another big one. Like, one of the biggest problems in security, the reason why we don't patch everything right away is that we're not confident in our ability to deploy a patch without breaking something. This is not actually a security function, but the fact that things like Claude Code can improve testing dramatically will make it easier to secure things because we're no longer going to be afraid of making changes. That's
Mhm.
also coming like approximately now. Threat intel. Like, threat intel
Mm.
is here. AI threat intel is here. That's, again, if I were a threat intel analyst, I would lean very heavily into either like social skills, doing dark web infiltrations and things like that, communication skills, executive briefings and things like that. But the
mm,
ability to gather, synthesize data, that function is being taken over by LLMs, like, as we speak already. I mean, when I was at Robinhood, we had an intern who came in and implemented a threat intel digestion feature that produced our daily threat intel briefs, and it took him like 3 weeks. And this was 2 years ago. He's a good intern, we like the
Yeah.
guy, but
Yeah.
still. So,
Hopefully doing great
any,
things in their career now. Yeah, we get that. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, for sure.
yes.
Yeah.
Anything text oriented, very much being taken over. Compliance. Um, we are using tools that gather relevant documentation and um, compile and summarize evidence to support audits. That is happening right now. Abstract threat modeling, again, that is happening right now. These tools right now, what we're seeing is They're pretty good. They're good enough to use. They still make mistakes. I love our compliance tools because they will often hallucinate controls that we should have but don't. Um, Take that right. Compliance
That's a
topic
feature.
on your
Yeah.
board. Yeah, it's a feature for me. Uh, but those problems are pretty quickly getting fixed, and already people are doing things like running a second agent over the compliance doc to verify that every statement that it contains is actually true, and that stuff is working pretty well. So, and a lot of the tools we try that we reject, we've rejected them not because the AI itself isn't good, but because all of the surrounding things are good. The APIs aren't there, the documentation, deployment and maintenance, manageability, permissioning, stuff that just some developer needs to go right. But the AI itself is there. So all of those things I think are coming really soon. There's actually not very much that I think is going to be the human preserve for the long term.
Okay, so let's go there then a little bit, right? So David's vision, I have kind of two directions we'll take this. The first one is, things that are in cybersecurity that you think are always going to either be human in the loop or human heavily involved at some level. What are some of those things that you think of where AI is just not going to really have either the horsepower, knowledge, experience, whatever the limitation is? Where are humans going to thrive in the future of cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to take as the assumption that as today, non-technical stakeholders really don't trust AI. Like they
Okay.
don't believe it. And I think therefore that all of the security functions that involve engaging with non-technical stakeholders, or I should say less technical stakeholders, which is incident response, compliance, certain parts of like product security, there will be humans involved because the other humans involved will want a person to explain to them what's going on. Even though an AI can do it perfectly adequately, emotionally people don't like that. Um,
Hmm.
it's possible that we as a society will change, that our AIs will get so good that things will flip. But right now, I think there are roles where a human will be kept in the loop. Think about it like a doctor. Would you rather be told that you have a serious medical condition by a human or by a robot? I think most people want a
Yeah,
human.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, a
same
human
thing. If you're the
100% of the
CEO, you're
time.
being
Yeah,
told that your company has just experienced $1 billion cybersecurity incident. You want to be told that by a person.
sure. That makes a lot
There's
of
the
sense.
classic thing from IBM's model: a human can never, or a computer can't be fired for making a bad decision, so a computer will never be a manager. I think I got the phrasing slightly wrong, but
Makes
uh,
sense. Makes sense.
but I think, that there are these creative elements that humans, uh, that AIs are nowhere close to, like
Yeah.
seeing the very big picture, thinking of novel solutions, handling very novel events, handling very, very low probability events. AIs are not very good at those things. Also, anything that is very poorly documented, like I would imagine within national security organizations, they're going to have to be slow to develop AI because there's going to be relatively less documentation that's ingested into the AI.
Mm.
They have to like generate their own LLMs, and they're probably companies that are similar that have a lot of proprietary information. So I think those are the places where humans are going to remain most engaged. But I will say that both overall and in cybersecurity, I do not think that most humans will have jobs in 20 years. I have a child who's going to be graduating from college in about 15 years. Like, is he ever going to have a job? He's not going to have a 40-year career, 60
Hmm.
years from now. I just think there's no chance that most humans are still doing jobs because they have to. Maybe people will still have, you can get into all sorts of philosophical things, but
Sure.
much more practically, like AIs are already really good, and 10 years is a really long time for
Yeah.
technology to develop, but not that long in the lifespan of a career or an industry. So
Mm.
I think that that's probably roughly the amount of time that we have left for humans in security. So, um, you know, hopefully society deals well with it.
Yeah. I mean, with
I have
with
no
you on
qualms
that. Yeah.
prognosticate on politics or sociology. So,
Sure. Sure.
uh,
Though it does sound like we should turn this camera off and dive deep into that topic, David. I think that would be fascinating. Just like Landon and I, the conversations we get to have off camera, the philosophical, moral, ethical, legal, all the complications that come with the advancing of our future in this area. So last month, our guest was a security leader. I also had the same thought. I was like, he thought that it was going to make us more human that it was going to have almost an inverse effect. The more AI we deploy, the more human we're going to become, because the artificial intelligence, it's going to do a lot, but it's going to leave the things that are intrinsically human, interpersonal relationships. Like you were mentioning, the communication level to the executive staff during an incident, that's going to be a very human function. But it's going to also make us want to have, the more we see that is not human, we're going to want more humanity. So hopefully, I would hope good things for our future as a species.
Yeah, one hope is that as people are free from the need to work, assuming that society can arrange appropriate mechanisms, um, they are able to engage in the things that they want to do. And so we see more art, we see
Yeah.
exploration, um, music, human connection, those sorts of things. That's the optimistic perspective on how this could all play out.
The good stuff in life. I mean, that's stuff that does make life and work much more enjoyable. Landon, as we kind of come to a close, is there anything kind of top of mind for you around this topic of where AI plays in the future of cybersecurity, or heck, we could just throw this all out and we just start talking about the philosophy of humanity.
No, I think it was a great discussion. David, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. You take in almost an hour out of your day to pontificate with us and share some thoughts, warnings, and I think good messaging and good thoughts around where's the future of AI heading and how can we be prepared. I think the biggest thing, I don't know if you agree, David, is we always say luck begets the prepared here at our company. And I think that's true of us as security professionals and true of us as just humans as we enter kind of this next phase of the human evolution, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been great to be on the show.
Yeah, it has been a real thrill to chat with you, David. I always find our conversations intellectually stimulating, and I learned some new things. What I'm taking away is that there is some things that we should be absolutely doing and exploring. If you're not already in an organization, dive deep into those areas. They can bring some significant benefit to your teams and to the processes that you're going after. And then also some things, start looking at now. Maybe thinking about it in your 18 to 24 month roadmap of how are we going to handle or deal with these, and but then also make sure we stay human, make sure that there's the right people talking to the right folks in the right ways so that you can best handle all of that. So with all of that said, for David Seidman, for Landon Brown, my name is Samuel Hill, and that's all for now.